Welcome to the Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth podcast. I am your host, Nathan Barkocy. In the True Wealth community and on this podcast, we are passionate about creating time freedom, impact, and purpose through real assets and real relationships. Because true wealth isn't solely what you have, it's who you become. Today, I am honored to welcome Caleb Johnson, a good friend of mine and a colleague. Caleb Johnson is the founder of Red Sea Capital, and he's a rising leader in the multifamily investing space. Caleb began investing at just 18 years old and has since built a portfolio of commercial real estate across multiple states, helping investors create stable, long-term cash flow through strategic and value-driven acquisitions. He has been the post for the From Trial to Triumph podcast, which is where he and I first got in touch. And he's been a speaker and he's a passionate educator who believes that real estate is one of the most powerful tools for building freedom and generational impact. Caleb's journey is one of resilience, discipline, and faith, exactly the kind of story that aligns with what we do here on the Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth podcast. So Caleb, I've done an introduction of yourself, but I'm excited for you to tell us more. How are you doing today?
Great, Nathan. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed watching you grow and we've grown together, in our businesses, but seeing you just take off with the book and the podcast and everything going on. So it's just been such a joy seeing that. So I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Caleb, it's such a pleasure to be doing this with you because obviously our first podcast together was several years ago when I had just acquired my first multifamily property, and we've both grown so much since then. I know that especially with the changes to my business, the development of my business, I've been able to move forward very rapidly, and that's been through guides like yourself. I've been really relying on all of the information that you put out there and all of the expertise that you have. So could you explain to my audience a little bit more about your expertise in the multifamily sector and how you've been able to build your business?
Yeah. So I've been investing a total of 8 years. I started in residential, but my residential small multifamily, like duplexes, fourplexes, and my motivation, drive for even getting into real estate was to help my mom financially so she could retire on time. And I also saw what happened to her. I didn't want that to happen to me when it came to a W-2 job. Not that W-2 jobs are bad. I think God made certain people for certain things, and I'm not the W-2 employee. So,
Cheers.
Yeah. So that was my initial motivation, and I landed on real estate because I learned that 90% of millionaires got their millions through real estate. I thought I needed to start small with a duplex, a single family rental, or a fourplex, and then get into these bigger and bigger properties. That was always my vision. But 3 years into my journey of buying rentals and flipping property, I got introduced to syndications. And that was the turning point for me 5 years ago. So let's call that around, 2020 is when I got introduced to that business model. And since then, we've acquired eight assets to date. We founded Red Sea Capital Group in 2023, but we've worked nationwide, so in 4 states: Oklahoma, New Mexico, Vegas, Las Vegas, Nevada, and then Arizona. Now that we're really honed in on the Phoenix market, which is where I'm currently based, and we are also vertically integrated. That means, for those that don't know, we manage our assets ourselves. So typically with these projects, like Nathan will find a great smoking good deal, hire a property manager that's experienced to run the show. Personally, we've decided to take property management in-house. So we get all those calls to renew leases and fix toilets, but that's what our business looks like today.
That's amazing. So there's a lot to unpack there. I want to take you all the way back to the beginning when you first got started. You were doing single family, duplex, What did that entail? How were you able to leverage your first deals? When you were buying your first property, what did that look like? How did you leverage that? Did you use your money, other people's money? Did you use some form of lending like a DSCR loan? How were you able to structure that? And then, of course, we'll get into how you adjusted and pivoted moving forward from private investments into larger syndications.
I first learned about real estate investing through YouTube and then was introduced to BiggerPockets. And after listening to podcasts and videos, learned the strategy called house hacking, which means you could take a residential property, usually at least, the largest could be 4 units, and you live in one unit and you rent out the other 3. I knew, as well, starting in this business, I would need a mentor. So I found a mentor after about 6 months of self-education, and that mentor was a realtor. He had some rentals himself, and the exact structure of a house hack typically looks like a 3.5% down payment because you get an FHA loan and it's owner occupied because you're living on site. But what's unique is, let's use a fourplex as an example, is I can use all 3 units as long as they're currently rented. I can use their rents as qualifying income, which means instead of just solely using my W-2 or 1099 income on my tax returns, I can now use their income to qualify for a higher to get a higher price property. So for my first deal, Nathan, I think I needed 11 grand, bought a $300,000 fourplex in 2017, 2018. After a year and a half, exited that deal for maybe 170-ish gain, did a 1031 into a retail facility, and then moved on to the next.
Okay, so has it kind of been a domino effect with 1031s from that first property?
So we sold a fourplex, acquired a retail facility through the 1031, and that, just to define what that 1031 is let's say we have a gain. Let's say we make $170,000 on a property. I'm going to take taxes, pay taxes on that, but the government incentivizes landlords to continue investing into the economy. So they've created what's called a 1031 exchange to, let's say that I would typically pay $40K in taxes on that 170. So I would pocket 130, but what the IRS says is you can take that full 170, roll that, and defer the taxes to pay at a later date, but you can use that full 170 towards the purchase price of the next asset. That's what we did. We bought a retail facility with those proceeds, but we still own that retail facility today.
That's amazing. Yeah. So thank you for explaining the 1031. We were just talking the same language, but it's really important to be able to define that for our audience if they don't know. 1031 is definitely the strategy that has assisted a lot of real estate investors to keep moving forward, growing their portfolio, right? And that also is a good drive to not just fall stagnant in the real estate sector, right? If you can keep rolling your capital gains into other properties, that helps you grow your portfolio. I mean, it gives you the desire to do so as well, right? As soon as you exit a project, you can roll that into another property. And then that's how you start getting into the apartments, right? Which is what you're doing now. You're doing larger complexes, larger apartment complexes. So now that you're raising capital from investors through a syndication and you're utilizing other people's money through the syndication to acquire larger apartment complexes, you mentioned that you're across the states, but you're also doing solo property management. So how have you been able to build the team around you to be able to move yourself forward through different states in order to manage those properties, as well as taking the time to manage them privately?
Yeah. Well, you marry up.
Yeah.
And I say that because I got married in May, and now that's shortly after that's when we started bringing property management in-house, even though I wanted to do that before. But she has a bandwidth and she's incredible. So she that's kind of her business, right? The property management arm, even though we were working hand in hand. But what prompted us wanting to go in-house was, I can sum it up this way. no one cares for your property like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had many poor experiences with property managers, delays in construction, um, being feed beyond belief from property managers. And at the end of the day, it's a job for them. For us, it's when we own a property, it's personal because our money's in the deal. More importantly, our investors' capital is in the deal as well. So I can't pay my bills. I can't make a living unless that property goes according to plan. So call it controlling or whatever you want, but that's the main reason we took that in-house. And marrying up has allowed us to really, for me to focus on what I'm good at, which is investor relations and acquisitions, finding opportunities, when now she can run that sector of the business.
That's incredible. And I find that funny because today, Marcin Drost, who's one of my colleagues as well, he posted a video on his Instagram, and he was talking about how his number one partner, his number one investment is his wife. And that's the thing that holds him. That is the person who holds him together, and this is something, in the acknowledgement section of my book that I'm publishing in January, I have a very long acknowledgement of my bride, right, of my wife, because she's the core of our household, and that's definitely important. But my bride isn't my business partner. So I really want to hear more about this from you. This is really interesting. So if you guys are business partners, how does that shake out at home? How can you guys, do you separate time between, relationship time where you're together as husband and wife, and then you have time as business partners? Does it just kind of mesh together all the time? What does that look like for you?
Well, I really appreciate that question because it's very important. And for us, our hierarchy is God first, and then our marriage, then our kids, and then ministry. That's how we've ranked that. So God first, marriage, kids, and then ministry, and then business. So we've, at the same time though, we're newlyweds, we're young, we're in our late 20s, and we have this bandwidth before we have children where we want to grow the business. And we were on the same page with that when we married. So it was a lot of initial conversations. And it's important to note that our situation, our structure, what we've decided is for us. Mm-hmm. That's what worked. Someone else listening to this, it might be totally different, like where you and your spouse cannot work together and you don't want to. And that's, praise God, that's fine. But what we've done is what has worked for us. So we have time allocated for date nights and family time, and then we also align with work. And when we talk about work, it's both, for both of us, it's very motivating, where we love talking about deals. I tell her about how we just locked down a property, have an LOI, and she tells me about a milestone that she's hit in her business. So we kind of feed off of that, but at the same time, we remember the hierarchy, and it's never a perfect system. I'm a guy, and so I think men, not all the time, it's like this, but for the most part, we're logical. We want a system. It's got to be the same thing over and over and over again. And if you expect your marriage to be like that, you're wrong. So
you've never been married, right? Yeah, no, entirely. Well, and what's so interesting about that is the systems. So did she do all of the real estate investment prior to you all becoming married, or was this a joint venture that started once you got married?
It started once we got married. So she comes from an investment she was a banker for 5 years at Wells Fargo, 2 years in New York, investment banking, and then worked at a PE firm for about a year. And then we got married. So she was introduced very business, very independent mindset. So she had a lot of those skills. But then when we became married, we already had conversations, understanding we're going to do this together.
Okay, so it was an understanding that you guys were going to pursue business together in your marriage.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. And so that has been something that you guys have held. And I like how you mentioned the hierarchy, right? So God first. So walk me through that as you guys have built this business together, right? And God is the center of your relationship, but He's also the center of your business. How does that structure out in your day to day?
How does faith structure out
Yeah.
day to day?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, it's at this point, and it's always changing based on how the Holy Spirit directs us. But for me, it's I start the day every day with God. It's a meditation time where I'm just in prayer and then diving into Scripture, and then I also personally like ending the day with some type of Scripture as well. So I like starting my day, ending my day with God, and she's of the same ilk with that. So even though we kind of have our own time with God alone, and it's different, sometimes we come together and do that. But and then it's when I was working at W-2, there were many opportunities where I couldn't bring faith into it, even though I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But now that my business revolves around faith, right? Like I never want to call faith a brand. I don't want to say that, but it's who I am, and sometimes that attracts people, and sometimes that defers people as well. But now I have the freedom to talk about God openly on calls, and I can start mentorships around faith, right? And then so faith always encompasses what I do. If it's praying before meetings, if it's planting seeds about the gospel in meetings as well, I always want to sprinkle faith into that.
Absolutely. And that's incredible. I think you and I could do a whole podcast just about faith. One thing I want to focus on, because I just did a podcast with Sharon Lecter, and I had mentioned a Napoleon Hill quote during that podcast because he's very, he's very pro faith in all of his philosophy as well. He says this quote. He says that faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches. Faith is the only known antidote for failure, right? And so that's something that you and I have relied upon very heavily, and obviously, right, my brand is very faith-based, and yours is too. And so I think that being able to found yourself right, that having faith as your rock, as your core, that helps you move forward. And there's going to be a lot of times, a lot of trials that you encounter as a first generation entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur in general, right? As a small business owner, a lot of trials that you face. But if you have your rock, your core, founded upon your faith, right? The faith in the true good, then that's going to keep you steady, right? That's going to keep you streamlined and have your one chief and definite aim that leads you forward. So taking that into consideration, I know there's definitely been trials that you have encountered as a young entrepreneur, and investing into your first properties and everything. If you could list one trial throughout your real estate investment, entrepreneurial career, what do you think was the most impactful trial or failure that you encountered that you were able to pivot and use as fuel forward to help grow your business?
That's a great question, and there's so many. From the first deal we acquired, it was a smaller property, and we had a surprise $50K plumbing bill. From partnerships that have gone south, and I think what the biggest learning lesson has been, and how I've currently shaped my business because of that, is when I was starting in this business, I did a lot of deals that I was a minority share owner, so a smaller piece of the pie. And now you can't, in our business, right? And this is kind of a GP topic, right? Because we understand, okay, splits and how can we pay our bills. I can't pay my bills when I own 3% of the entire deal,
Right.
unless it's a $100 million property, and the deals that I was doing was 20 units. So that has been a tremendous learning lesson. And now because of that, I've shaped my business to where it's our company. We are the lead. We buy properties locally. We do property management in-house. So the learning lesson has been, I did a lot of deals with small positions, and I wish sooner. I wish how everything played out would have happened sooner rather than later. But I've learned from doing these smaller deals and being a smaller owner to being the majority owner and providing more value to the team.
Okay, yeah. So then taking that into consideration, how would you give advice to someone who's interested in pursuing this, right? Because you started with the single families, the smaller properties, and you moved into those larger properties. There's a lot to understand in the structuring of a syndication and the structuring of a passive deal for your investors to come into, with the different splits, with the different equities, with different holdings, different, management positions. There's so much I could go into with this, right? How would you recommend for someone who's just starting off as an investor to get started?
Well, wow. I think first of all, you have to define what you want, because multifamily might not be perfect for you. Everyone's in a different season of life. I truthfully believe commercial multifamily real estate investing is the fastest way to true generational wealth and financial freedom. So I believe that, but I think it starts with knowing that before you go down that path. And you can have conversations with Nathan or myself about how to understand what does that even look like, and is it the right path for me? I'd read books. I have a book from from rentals to apartment complexes. So education, it's answering that question. And then from there, finding a mentor that can teach you underwriting. They can teach you how to raise capital. They can teach you how to find opportunities. Because I'm a big advocate for mentors. Mm-hmm. I've always had mentors in my life, some paid, some unpaid, and we've spent tens of thousands of dollars in coaches. And I've done that because I understand time is what I don't get back. We can spend 5 years learning something, or we can pay somebody 10 grand to teach it to us in 3 months. In my book, I just bought back 4 years and 9 months, right? From what they learned. It took them 5 years to learn. It took me 3 months to learn. I'd pay 50 grand for that, right? Depending on, I guess, my financial situation. That's what I would say someone needs to start with.
Absolutely. And it's so true how this is the case for every aspiring and proactive entrepreneur. They all say the same, right? A successful entrepreneur always says that the first step is to become financially literate, to understand after you study, right? You learn your information. Then you need to take action after you've learned from your mentor, right? Easily my highest expense is my mentorship fees and my partnership with the really high caliber mentors that I have in my network, and the coaching that I receive from them, right? The step-by-step actions that I need to be taking. So you search for that mentorship, and then the difference between a dreamer and a successful entrepreneur is taking action. So you learn, you use the guidance of a mentor so that you don't make all the mistakes that they made, and then you take action. And there will be mistakes all the time, right? You and I can both speak for that, right? There's been mistakes, as plenty of mistakes going forward. So as you're continuing to grow your businesses, Caleb, there's obviously a lot of success that you've encountered thus far. You've been able to roll properties. You've been able to begin syndications. You've been able to learn so much and achieve so much. Do you have a certain goal that you're going towards?
Well, yes and no. It's more of an internal goal. Like, we want to hit a certain financial milestone in our lives with my wife and I. But at the end of the day, the BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal is that we want to make a lot of money. We want to give it all away. So it looks like starting nonprofits. I'm very sensitive to people that just have not been taught financial literacy. I don't think our schooling system, how America is structured, has been structured well to teach people taxes. We don't teach people how to make money. How does money work? How can you grow money? How can you, instead of being an employee, why don't you be the employer and provide job opportunities for people?
Right.
And again, there's God made people to be employees, and God made people to be employers and owners and CEOs. So I think first it's understanding who did God create to be, and then lean into that. So and then my wife is from Nicaragua, and she has a very sensitive heart to providing resources to single mothers. So that's our long-term vision. In real estate, we see it as a path to that.
Absolutely. And there's so much passion behind that, Caleb. That's really incredible, right? It's not just focusing on yourself for the desire to build monetary wealth, right? This is the definition of true wealth. This is exactly what you guys are doing. True wealth is generosity, right? True wealth is giving back to your community. Imagine, Caleb, if there was a world of business owners like yourself, like myself, who want to build this wealth to be able to educate the younger generation so that they can go forward and create an abundance of purpose, an abundance of productivity in the economy, so that, I mean, we're living in a true wealth society, right? I mean, this is exactly what you and I are both passionate about. And I think that's incredible that you guys have that mission behind, or I guess the driving mission behind all of your real estate investments to be that. That is incredible. And that also definitely proves that your hierarchy is in place, right? That God is first, and that you guys always lean towards that. And so as you move forward now with your wife, and as you begin to bring your properties more centralized into the Phoenix area, are you looking to expand at a certain rate your portfolio in the Phoenix area? Are you looking to exit your properties in the other states? What does your investment portfolio look like going forward?
Well, our properties at this point in time that are out of state are running smoothly, and they're just going. So, and we have partners that are asset managers, boots in the ground, really centralizing their time to make sure that happens, which allows us to, my wife and I, to build our business here. As of December 2025, we want to buy a deal a quarter for the next 2 years. Just how we see the Phoenix market positioned, the opportunities that we see available, insurance, interest rates. We are in full acquisition mode, and we want to, that's our initial goal, and focus on that 50 to 100 unit range.
Okay, that's incredible. And that's the very chief and definite aim, like I had mentioned before, right? You have definitely some milestones that you want to hit. So taking that into consideration, what is your advice for an aspiring entrepreneur who, just like myself, just like I was in the past, very scatterbrained, there's an infinite amount of possibilities to move forward with real estate, with entrepreneurship, with all of this. You obviously have been able to set up clear objectives to accomplish. So how would you advise a young entrepreneur who is interested in pursuing their dreams, but may not know how to do so? They need to be able to create milestones that they can achieve just like you are.
Two things. One is find somebody that has what you want. Two is be coachable and patient. And well, first, you need to be coachable and patient, because at late teens, early 20s, or whenever you're starting this entrepreneurship journey, could be 30s, 40s, doesn't matter. Whenever you're starting, you wanted the result yesterday. And it takes years to develop relationships with people and to find the right partners. But when you find those right partners and mentors, you need to be coachable. And Nathan, I'll expand on this with you. You are very coachable, right? You have to be able to be willing to take advice and humble yourself and say, what I was doing was wrong. Or even to your question, right? I don't know what direction to take. There's so many directions to take. Which one do I take? You can either sit on that question and not move from that and just be scatterbrained the rest of your life, or you can say, who has what I want? And then what did they do that I can do? So first, it's humbling yourself, knowing that you don't know everything, and be coachable. Be willing to take advice, guidance, and then implement it. As a mentor, it is so frustrating when you give somebody advice and then you talk to them a month and they're in the same spot. You ask them, did you do such and such and such that I told you to do? And they got busy. So life happens. We're all human. I get it. There becomes a point where you need to buckle down and just do it. You have to stop making excuses, stop thinking, just take action, right? Just focus on taking action. Don't do anything else until you've taken that action. Don't eat, don't sleep until you've done what you know you need to get done. So humble and coachable. The second one is find somebody that has what you want, because they've got the formula. It's really, I say easy, but it's a lot easier than creating the formula when you know somebody that has it. Then it's just, again, humbling yourself and doing what they suggest you to do.
Right, and following in their tracks, right? And it's so much easier to do this when you're surrounded by people who have accomplished all of the dreams that you have for yourself, right? Because they've done it. They can teach you how to do it. They can tell you what not to do. That's probably the most important thing, is learning what not to do, right? So that's very important. And really all of this comes down to accountability, right? And I know a lot of people shy away from the term accountability, right? Because that may not be what they're looking for, is someone to hold them accountable. But obviously you had just mentioned, right, just taking action, right? Taking action when you have a mentor telling you what to do, right? Do you try to work on holding your mentees or your business partners accountable?
Absolutely. We structure our program to be around accountability, because again, life happens and it's human nature that things will fall through the cracks. And when there's so much to do, we clam up. It's human nature. So when that comes to daily check-ins, weekly check-ins, formulating like a pod where you meet with 4 to 6 people on a weekly basis, talk about wins. What did you do last week? What's your biggest challenge to accomplishing the next phase? That's very, very, very important.
Mm-hmm. And how does that work for you in particular with your partners? I know that you said you've had some partners. So how are you able to vet those partners? And then how do you hold them accountable and keep them in honesty and taking actions forward?
Well, the answer is don't have partners. Just do it all yourself. And this is just me again. Everyone's made differently and built differently, and God's got a plan for everybody. For me personally, it's come down to I want to own everything in-house. I don't want to have any partners. You could have the greatest partner in the world, and if you rely on them too heavily, they have all the best intentions, but it's going to come to a point where they're going to start another business, and so their resources and time is going to get taken elsewhere, and that's fine. We're all in different seasons of our life, and so I believe, if God has placed someone in my life, and then they get taken out of my life, it's for the purpose of someone else coming in that's better suited for the next season of my life.
Right.
So, when it comes to partnerships, my answer is work towards owning everything yourself, but building relationships with people faith alignment is very important for me. At the same time, I've worked with people that I have partners that are not faith driven whatsoever, but they are great partners. I've had people that are believers in Christ and they aren't the best partner. So it's time is the best answer. And seeing what someone's track record is also a good gauge of that. And a very important thing to note on that is rock stars hang out with rock stars. If you have a mentor or meet someone that is awesome, even if they're a social media influencer, right? Like I think of Grant Cardone or Alex Hormozy, if that's who you want to be around, do whatever it takes to be around those people. One of my mentors, he flew to he was in Arizona, flew to Massachusetts just on a whim, just to be around this guy that he wanted to mentor him. And he told this guy, "Hey, I'm going to be there tomorrow from Phoenix," and paid the $800 to fly there. Mm-hmm. Alex Hormozy paid $1 million. I believe this is true, but he paid $1 million just to have Grant Cardone for 4 hours. An hour in, he said, "Hey, I have everything I need," and still paid the $1 million. So it's do whatever it takes, even if it seems impossible to be around that person. Do whatever it takes to be around that rock star. And if it might turn out they aren't the rock star for you, but if they're a rock star, it's likely they have rock stars around them that is the right fit for you.
Which is incredible. Yeah, that is such incredible advice, because the most valuable dollars someone will spend is on their education for themselves, right? On books, on podcasts, on private education for themselves, and buying buying access into the most valuable rooms, right? This is exactly how I have built my same network too. And maybe someone needs to come to one of us for mentorship, and we're able to guide them to a certain extent. We also have the network that we do, right, to be able to guide them to the broader network, like Ken McElroy, like Sharon Lecter, like Russell Gray, like all of these people that are in my network that I'm working with. I can leverage their wisdom, right? And you've been able to leverage the wisdom of your mentors in order to achieve success and take action. And so, Caleb, you and I have unlocked probably 5 more podcasts just in this wonderful time together. I appreciate you doing this with me. I know that we have busy schedules, you and I both running several businesses, and so I want to be very respectful of your time. So if there was one final piece of advice that you could leave for my audience, based upon everything that we've discussed today, based upon your real estate portfolio, everything that you have learned, if you could share your wisdom, right? What is one piece of wisdom that my audience would be able to gain from you today?
Well, I would say 2 things. Take action, right? If you know the one thing you got to do today to get closer to the next goal, the next phase in your life, take it, right? Do not eat, do not sleep, do not drink until you do the one thing. Just take the step in the next direction. And the second thing I'd say is if you want to take the next journey into multifamily, buy the book From Rentals to Apartment Complexes on Amazon. And if you want to go serious into multifamily, but the action part applies to everybody.
Perfect. Yeah. And so how can my audience find you if they would like to learn more from you and see the work that you've done? What is the best way for them to find you?
Well, you can find us on LinkedIn, Caleb Johnson, all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and find more information for us there.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time today, Caleb. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you for sharing your expertise and for helping really build the importance of this True Wealth community. And so for all of you tuning in to the Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth podcast, just remember that tomorrow is never promised. So I encourage you all to go make the most of today and take that action that Caleb is talking about.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.